It's a UConn team that comes at you in waves, and they always save one for the final blow. Kling Kong up at the rack to make it a 10-point game. Alabama going quick as we approach the 2-minute mark. There he is again, clinging on the defensive end, just running up and down the court. And at the other end, after a brief breather, it's clinging to the rack. A 12-point advantage, plenty for a UConn team that will defend their national title on National Championship Monday. We have a final set. It's the UConn Huskies and the Purdue Boilermakers as UConn takes down Alabama 86-72. Danny Hurley's squad, maybe not their cleanest performance, but man, there were moments where they looked unbeatable. Leading the way, Klingen 18 points, 5 rebounds, and an assist. Castle with 21 of his own as the Huskies make it to Championship Monday, where they will take on the Boilermakers of Purdue. Postgame on HQ is presented by the United States Marine Corps. Joe Musso alongside Chip Patterson. And Chip, it's been a fun tournament. I'm glad we did it. But we ultimately end where we thought we would. 1 versus 1 in the national title game. We will get to that matchup in a moment. But first, a thought here on what UConn was able to do in the face of a first-half flurry from Alabama. That three-point shooting was exactly what they needed. But in the second half, looked more like that UConn team we've grown to know over the last 2 years. Yeah, without a doubt. It doesn't matter what style you want to play. You can dictate the style, and UConn will tell you how it will win in that way. I thought this was an incredibly well-played game. It was executed at a high level by the players. And how about the coaches, where you've got a former Bobby Hurley assistant in Nate Oates going toe-to-toe, adjustment for adjustment against Dan Hurley, who I do think is elevated himself to being one of the top coaches in the sport. Well, we saw the graphic during the game, 7-0 run, 8-0 run, 7-0 run, 8-0 run. But to me, this is about what UConn did defensively. And defensively, they are Donovan Klingen on the way out, because from the 8-minute mark to the 4-minute mark in the second half, Alabama 2 for 11 from the field. They could not get a bucket, but as much as they could not get a bucket, UConn could not stop getting stops. Just phenomenal effort on both ends from the Huskies. I think they were tested and they were made uncomfortable in a way that they haven't been many times this season. And the fact that they always had the answers and the response shows their true championship caliber. It really did, because it required more resiliency. The final score might not show that, as, again, it is a 13-plus point victory here, 14 over Alabama. But it wasn't as clean as we expected to see it, or that we've come to expect out of UConn in the first half. The adjustments were there, and you spoke on them, but there is an inevitability about the way that they do things. Right. It's like, you know that run is going to come. They come at you in waves. How do they play with such a belief? I know it's a tough question to answer, but at this point in the season, to have your mettle tested in a first half the way it was, and to still come out of here winning by 14. I'm just taken back at the nature in which they're winning these games. Yeah, I'm thinking about figures like Alex Caravan, who you're not going to look at as the superstar, maybe not even the first or second player. He's got 14 points, he's got 8 rebounds, he had a couple blocks, a couple assists, but they were important rebounds and they were important blocks, one of them leading to a shot clock violation over there by the Alabama sideline. Those role players who understand when they need to step up, you know, Cam Spencer coming up with some key plays. This is a team, and we will get to, you know, the matchup with Purdue in a little bit, but if you were to ask me in the NCAA tournament, let's just draft players who you trust in the NCAA tournament. UConn starting 5 are probably 5 of the top 20 players I would have drafted of the entire field of 68. They have more players who understand how to play together and play together at a high level than anybody else in the country, and that's why they are where they are. You talk about the fabric of this group that just continually shares the ball, continually understands how to operate within the flow of their system, and it all starts from Dan Hurley on the way down. It is evenly spread production here by this UConn team. All 5 starters averaging 10-plus points, none more than 16. Everybody's going out there and doing what is asked of them by Danny Hurley. On the other side, again, we get to this point in the year and all you can do is applaud those who fall this late. Alabama and Nate Oates have elevated over this last 5 or so years. It's a program that I think is being looked at differently, now sort of a mainstay in weekend number 2 and even further this season. What stood out to you about not this performance on this night, because they did maybe what they were asked to do by their head coach at times, but throughout this season for Alabama? They tonight were bit by their shortcoming during the season, which was on the defensive end. You know, they
needed to be more patient. They needed to be more locked in. They weren't good with their rotations. And that goes into the things that we saw from Alabama. It's why they gave up more 100-point games than most of the teams in this tournament field. It's why their offensive efficiency was outside of the top 100 in the entire country. But going back to the Alabama in the big picture, this is a team that has gotten to the NCAA tournament in 4 years out of the 5 years that Nate Oates has been there. And last year it was disappointing. They were the #1 overall seed in the tournament. They fall short in the Sweet 16. So the two reads of Alabama are, okay, this is their first ever Final Four. They've only been to the Elite Eight twice. Well, I see this as a continuation of what Nate Oates has done to transform the way Alabama thinks of itself and the way that we should look at Alabama, because the confidence that you saw from this Crimson Tide team when things got tough, the way that Mark Sears, Grant Nelson, all these different pieces have stepped up and answered the call. They had to go through North Carolina. They outlasted Clemson. And then, yes, even here against UConn, they were every bit the competitor and ready for the fight. So I think that we are going to look at Alabama differently under Nate Oates because, yes, Alabama, first ever Final Four, only been to the Elite Eight twice. Well, buddy, get used to it, because as long as Nate Oates is the head coach there and he just signed a contract extension, I think we're going to see more deep runs from the Crimson Tide in years to come.
Highest profile coach in that athletic department at this point, it can be said.
Hey, easy. Kalen DeBoer is out there.
True.
We've got spring game coming up.
You got a great point to make there, and Alabama has made a point for themselves over these last couple of seasons, Chip, but we can't sidestep it any longer. It's the matchup we wanted to see. Kling Kong versus Zach Zilla. The first time in the NCAA tournament, two players of 7'2" or taller will meet in a national title game. Will meet in any game in the NCAA tournament. It's going to be great. Vegas has got a number. I'm going to make you guess it in a moment. But first, how do these two match up? Full sides, not just the bigs.
Okay, this is going to be really important for Purdue to be able to knock down those outside shots around Zach Edey, because what we saw from UConn in this matchup against Alabama is perimeter defenders that get their hands in passing lanes and disrupt outside shooting. Because Alabama, what were they, 73% three-point shooting at halftime? Where did they finish? 48%. We saw a little bit of three-point regression, but we also saw those adjustments by Dan Hurley and by this defense. Players like Stephon Castle, players like Cam Spencer, you get Diarra out there, and they've got those active hands that are going to make life difficult. And so that's where Purdue, a very good three-point shooting team, has got to be dropping it, because one thing that every other team that Purdue has to play is think about double-teaming Zach Edey. When you've got Donovan Clingan, and when you've got Donovan Clingan playing at this level, as healthy as he's been all season, as confident as he's been all season, you might not have to send that double team all that often.
It's going to be fun to watch that matchup inside. It's going to be fun to watch these two teams who appeared poised for one another all season long finally give us that moment. Cinderellas have been sent home. It is a pair of 1 seeds in the national title game. I got the number in front of me. What do you think it is?
5.5.
5.5 going UConn's way?
Yeah.
If this doesn't work out, you're a fantastic writer, they got room for you in Vegas. 6.5 is the number at open. I'm sure we will see numbers ranging from 5.5 to 7.5, somewhere between, as this number gets bet both ways before Monday's matchup. On the inside specifically, you allude to it. It can be a one-on-one matchup. And these are two bigs, two bodies that match up nicely, but they do things different ways. Maybe an athletic advantage goes the way of Clingan, but a power advantage goes to Edey. With it being played out on a national title stage and all that comes with that as well, who do you give the advantage in that one-on-one?
Donovan Clingan.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Donovan Clingan's ability to be able to just impact everything. He moves so well defensively, and I think that in terms of an X factor, and I might be unfair to the 2-time National Player of the Year here, but if I'm just going to go vibes, there is a fire that comes with Donovan Clingan that I think ignites this UConn bench, this team, and it comes like right from its head coach as well. Again, there's nothing wrong with more of a stoic presence, which I do think Zach Edey tends to demonstrate. He's not screaming the way that Donovan Clingan is screaming, and I just think that what we just saw in a back-and-forth game when energy and answers were needed, Donovan Clingan was so often a part of those. So at the margins, at the smallest of margins, let me take the guy who's a little bit skinnier below the waist, but maybe a little bit more fiery when it comes to above the neck.
We like to say, only one way to find out, and we will find out on Monday night. It is a national title game set in Arizona between 1 seeds in Purdue and UConn. Chip Patterson, we appreciate you for your thoughts as UConn will try and make some history. Taking a look at your last 10 #1 overall seeds. One has not won since Louisville back in 2013. Predating this is the first time a reigning national champion has made it to the title game since the Zags. They're losing both in 2021 and 2022.